Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Misty Sansom. Misty Sansom is a writer and a life purpose coach who helps people to figure out exactly what they're meant to do in life and how to make it happen. Her philosophy is that we all have a purpose, something we are meant to do, but often we struggle with how to find it, how to articulate it, and how to bring it to life. Misty guides people through this process through one-on-one coaching, her monthly membership, and her Find Your Purpose ebook. Misty's approach to purpose, spirituality, and personal growth is practical, down to earth, and simple to follow. Her work has been featured on the Huffington Post, The Daily Guru, Mind, Body, Green, and more. Get started with her free resources and tools at mistysansom.com. In today's episode, Misty and I really dive into finding your purpose. That nudge, that calling, listening to your heart, learning how to hear the whispers, and honing in to what it is that you were meant to do in life, why you are here. And it is so good today. This was such a great conversation. I think you guys are going to love it. I am super excited to welcome the one, the only Misty Sansom to the Sisterhood of Sweat today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat today.
Well, you have the most beautiful accent. What part of New Zealand are you from?
I'm in the North Island, so if anyone is familiar with New Zealand, a couple of hours above Auckland. So yeah, it's a very beautiful place. We're really lucky to be here.
Well, I have a friend in Fitness America that is from New Zealand, and
really?
She showed us pictures, and I was like, I want to visit. It's so gorgeous there.
Yeah, it is. And because it's such a small country, we're really lucky that you're never too far from the beach. You're never more than kind of like 2 hours or something like that from the beach. So yeah, we're very lucky at our little country in the middle of nowhere at the bottom of the earth. It's great.
I love that. That's one of the things I loved about Ireland too. When we went to visit Ireland before the pandemic, we found you'd be driving along the countryside and you'd hit a beach.
Yeah, you can't help it, right?
Yeah. There were farms, farmland, and beach. I was like, I've never seen anything like it. So
yeah.
I'm going to put you on my list to visit.
Yes.
We are empty nesters, my husband and I, and so we have a list. Next is Germany, and then I love New Zealand, and Iceland would be one.
Yeah, and I see a lot of photos of the Iceland landscape, and in some ways it looks kind of similar to a lot of the South Island in New Zealand. So yeah, you'll love it. It's great.
So yes, this pandemic put a wrench in our travel plans, as everybody else's, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Have you guys had lockdowns, or what's it been like over there?
We have. So we had quite a strict lockdown earlier in the year. I think once we got to, I want to say like between 10 to 15 community cases in the country, we went into a lockdown for around about 8 weeks, and we've had very small outbreaks since then, but for the most part we are totally back to normal. So we don't need to worry so much about social distancing anymore. I think that they're still really encouraging people to wear masks on public transport, but life is very much, somewhat back to normal here, with the exception that the borders are closed. So anyone coming into New Zealand has 2 weeks in quarantine. And it's been really funny seeing a lot of overseas reports about that. They're kind of spinning it in this like, they're putting people in camps and they're locking people up. And oh my gosh, you should see the I'm doing air quotes for the quarantine. They're 5-star hotels. So I've had friends, you know, come back from overseas and yeah, they're put up in a hotel for 2 weeks, and it's this little, it's this little bit of like luxury and rest and relaxation before they, you know, go home to family and things like that. So
Yes. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. I
very
have a
lucky.
friend going on a trip and they're not telling their family that they're there. They're going to go
Wow.
off for 2 weeks so they can quarantine before they see them. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's just the way it is right now. But it's good to hear you guys are back to normal. And I pray for the rest of the world to get back to normal too. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, how I just want to kind of get into our topic today. And first, I want the listeners to learn a little bit about you, Misty. How did you get into the business of life coaching?
So that was a very natural evolution of the topic that I talk about most and really focus on, which is purpose, and understanding what your purpose is, and then creating a plan of how you're going to bring it to life and live it on a day-to-day basis. So I actually started with that in mind, and I created an ebook, and I would talk about this a lot, and you know, I had a website and a blog, and it very naturally transitioned into life coaching, as in I was starting to get people approach me and say, like, I would really love to work with you. So that's just how the specifics of the life coaching came about. But in terms of the topic around purpose, it's been something that I've had in the back of my mind my whole life. So I've always felt like there was something that I was meant to do, something really specific. And I spent a lot of my early years very frustrated because I was trying to figure it out, and I wanted to, you know, understand whatever this thing was, and I wanted to make that the focus of my life. And I just could not figure it out. So like so many people who are on this journey, I was going down this path of thinking, oh, I think this is my purpose, I'm going to go and do that. And I would run down this path and inevitably get to a point where it was like, oh my goodness, that is not it. And so I would think, okay, well, I'm really into this, so maybe this is my purpose. And I would do that over and over. And then eventually I decided I needed to really focus on it and make it the forefront of my mind until I figure out what this thing is, because otherwise it was going to completely drive me mad. And I did, over a period of months, I really dove into personal growth and self-reflection and intuition, and letting myself be drawn to things, and just trying to find the puzzle pieces that really kind of fit together. And eventually I did get to a point where I understood very clearly what it was, which is my purpose is to help others find theirs. And that was an interesting process because it opened up a whole other area of personal growth. Because initially I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, that's not a thing, you know, I can't go and study that. And like, that's not a job. So it kind of set off this whole other journey of personal growth, and in terms of self-belief and kind of having that higher understanding of what it means to live on purpose and what it looks like to be able to bring something to life and all of these things. And as I went through that journey, I started looking back and thinking, you know, what would have helped me? What are the things that if I'd known, you know, 5-10 years earlier would have made this whole process a lot faster, a lot easier, sort of saved myself a lot of those you know, dead ends. And I, you know, nothing is ever in vain. They're always great experiences, but that's what I started to really focus on. And that turned into a process that I still use today with clients, in terms of the questions to ask, the exercises to do, the things to reflect on, the different prompts that really help people uncover what their purpose is and how they're going to bring it to life. And I put that process into an ebook, which again is still available for people to go through on their own. And then I've built coaching around that, and a membership and other kinds of things. So yeah, that's what I do now. I absolutely love it. And yeah, that's the topic of or my focus for my website and business.
Well, I love that. And I will echo that sentiment that I believe that we all are called to a purpose and we're all here for a reason. And many times in life, I think that we may be in environments that tell us we're too loud, we're too something, and we dumb this down, or we try to please others. So we kind of get so used to that people pleasing, or so and so thinks I should do this, or this person is doing that, I think I should do that, that we can't even hear ourselves anymore and realize who we are. How do we discover who we are at the core?
Oh, I love that question. And yeah, I just want to just really reinforce that. It's so absolutely true. I think that when we're younger, we do have this really beautiful, um, intuitive sense of what we're really into, and we actually understand a lot more about ourselves because we're not sort of hindered in any way. But as we get older, that society pressure and expectations and other people's ideas of what you should be doing and how you should be living start to come in. And then it's through those teenage years and early adulthood and, and so on that you just get squashed. Your shine is dulled. You kind of, you slot into society and like that's meant to be you. So if you are at a stage in life, which I think that we all hit at some point, where you're suddenly thinking, who am I and what am I about and what am I here to do? The place that I really encourage people to start, and this is part of the process of finding your purpose as well, is to start with understanding who you are from a personality perspective. The reason that I really like this is because it's very fun, it's very quick, it's often very insightful, and it's just a really great way to bring yourself up to speed really quickly with some of those core character traits that you may or may not be aware of. So things like personality profilers, they get a hard time in terms of how scientific they are. But I always kind of come back to, if it's something that resonates with you, if it's something that gives you a bit of insight, then don't stress about, whether it's like technically totally scientifically accurate or not. So the one that I always encourage people to start with, or the one that I really like, is Myers-Briggs based profiler. And there's one by a company called 16 Personalities. It's totally free to do. You don't have to register or anything like that. And it gives you a very in-depth overview of your personality profile. So I always encourage people to start there. And it's so interesting going through that profile and seeing what comes up, because often you'll find that you will have things confirmed about yourself. You'll kind of read it and think, right, I can totally see that. That's something that I do, often. I've done that often throughout my life. It can make you aware of things that you aren't consciously, you haven't consciously thought of. And I guess an example of that is that I think sometimes we all have traits that we just assume everyone else shares. We might have a way of looking at the world that we think is just totally normal. And we kind of just think, well, everyone does this. It's just a standard part of being a human. But often those traits are things that are really specific to you. And those kind of traits can be where our gifts are hidden. I always kind of tell people that the things that come really naturally and easily to you are often the things that you do dismiss because, again, you kind of think, well, everyone can do this. But they're the things that often really set you apart. So I love going through a personality profiler from that perspective. And then also just sometimes shifting how you view some of your traits. So as an example, talking about, people being too much, or you're too this, or you're too loud, or you're too whatever. I think, again, we all have traits that we've probably tried to suppress, or we've probably tried to downplay, or, the things that we might beat ourselves up about. And so it's really, it's such a relief when you read something like this and it's just kind of explaining, no, this is who you are and it's totally fine. This is just a natural part of your personality. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just kind of how you're wired. You know, you don't need to stress about it. You can sort of work around it if you want to. You can highlight it if you want to. You can do whatever you need to do to move forward. So yeah, that's probably the place that I would start.
You know, I have gotta say, public speaking was one of the things I feared most because I had a bad experience as a child at a play where my friend got sick right before, so they gave me their lines as well as my lines, and I forgot mine and theirs, you know, because it was too much to, you know, all at once right before walking out on the stage, and I froze. And I just think nobody really soothed me about it. And so I thought, oh gosh, this is just not something I'm good at. And that was a young age, right?
Yeah.
To not realize that that was a lot of pressure to be put on somebody, you know. And so for the longest time, that would not be something I wanted to do. I would almost have a heart attack, or I won't say, you know, just breathing like I was running sprints when I had to get up in front of people to talk. It would just make me so nervous. So when I was called by my purpose, and I've always known I was here to motivate people from a very young age. So I'll say that. So when I felt that calling to have to speak, I just drug my feet and I was just like finding every reason and excuse and just, who am I to do this? Are you sure, God? Are you really calling me? Like, I don't even want to do that, you know? And just the whole, but really, it was all based in fear. And fear of, you know, just what had happened before, fear of who am I to do this, fear of, well, do I have anything important to say? I mean, just the fear factor. How today, I know since I'm talking to you, the life coach, how does one get over their fear? I know how I did mine, but how can we help the audience for whatever their big dream is to get over their fears today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go over this and then I would love to hear how you got over yours. That's really
Okay.
interesting because that's such a traumatic experience at a young age. And it really does. It wires up this, you know, rock solid belief of, yeah, public speaking is not good. Like, never do that. So, you know, and I love that you were able to work through it. I'm really excited to hear. So my approach for this is, you know, we've all heard the phrase like feel the fear and do it anyway, which I'm not a fan of. Like, I'm not a fan of that philosophy at all. It doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like a better approach is to feel the fear, identify the root cause of the fear, overcome the issues, build up your confidence, and then do whatever it was you were planning to do with genuine enthusiasm and passion, which isn't as catchy as a small phrase, but it's a lot more effective. So the thing that I always come back to with fear is it's not something that you can really ignore. And if you do sort of try and push through it just by, you know, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, it's really likely that you're not going to go as far or be as effective or empowered as you would be if the fear wasn't there in the first place. So I always want to come back to you're so much better to really properly address your fears once and for all. So the way to do that, the first step is to really identify what your fear is. And again, I think that some people will find this really easy. Like you had a very clear fear, you knew exactly where it came from. So that's quite helpful in terms of going forward and learning how to address it. Some people, their fears might be a little bit vague and not as clear cut. So that's something that you need to sort of dig down into. And one of the examples I have is, say, a fear of commitment. So that's quite a broad fear. And with this one, if you're feeling like, that's a fear that I have, a fear of commitment, you want to get as specific as possible with it. So you want to think about, what exactly is it about commitment that I'm afraid of? Like if it's in a relationship, am I scared that my partner might leave me? So then that indicates the fear could actually be around abandonment. Or is it that I'm afraid that my partner might try and change me? And then that fear could actually be about feeling controlled, or losing your sense of identity or your sense of self. It might be that you're afraid of being hurt again if you've been in a relationship where that's happened before. And then that kind of points to a previous experience that hasn't been addressed. So it's really important to get as specific as you can about what the fear is. And then the second step is working out the root cause. And so again, with you knew very clearly what that was. And I think, yeah, absolutely. As children, we're wiring so much up in our brain, and when you experience something that feels so deeply traumatic, like that is, as a kid, that's something that's really, really takes hold of you. It's something that can just stay for a long time. If you're not sure what the root cause is, then a bit of self-reflection and sort of going back, trying to think of different times that this has come up in your life, or sort of the earliest memory that you have of this happening. And just as a side note, one of the ways that I encourage people to try and uncover or identify the root cause of this fear is to use things like self-hypnosis. I'm a big fan of that. And it's really, I know that some people feel uncomfortable about the idea of self-hypnosis, but if you've ever listened to a guided meditation, it's very similar. The difference is that in a guided meditation, your mind is kind of somewhat passive, and you're very relaxed and you're following along, whereas in a hypnosis, you're very relaxed but your mind is a bit more active. You're being asked to pull something from your subconscious mind that you may not have consciously thought about. So no one will get stuck or start kind of running around like a chicken or anything like that in these sessions, but that can be really helpful to identify the root cause of a fear. And then once you understand what it is, then reframing the situation or that belief in your mind is really helpful. And because it's often to do with something that we experienced as a kid, a way to reframe the situation is to kind of go back to it and really imagine it. And, for you, like imagining yourself, how you felt before you came out on stage, and then going out on stage and sort of freezing, and how that felt and everything. And then I like to imagine, having your adult self go back. So your adult self would like meet the younger you on the stage, and you would have this conversation, and you would say all of the things that you probably needed someone to say to you in that moment or at that time, and just reassure, that your younger self that, you're okay and you're safe and you're loved and you're worthy, and this is fine. It's not a big, it's not something that needs to define you, and all of these kinds of things. And often seeing a situation from an adult perspective is enough to really take the edge off that situation or whatever the fear is. So that's generally the way that that I would sort of help people through. And then once we get to actually moving forward past the fear, once we've done those things, then we can start to look at like, okay, what are little actions that I can take, and what is the new belief that I want to reinforce to myself as this situation comes up again, because it will, it will come up again. And so when it comes up again, what are the things that I'm going to tell myself? What are the little steps I'm going to take to just keep moving forward?
I love that. I love that so much. And I would say to anybody out there that moving through your fear and really acknowledging it, but realizing, well, as long as you're not jumping off of a bridge, you're not going to die from public speaking. You're not going to die from doing a podcast. you're not going to die from, being on stage, doing a fitness competition or whatever, or climbing that mountain. Maybe you're afraid of heights, like I was afraid of heights. I started really pushing through my fears because I felt like if I could just push through my fears, I was going to rise up to higher heights in life. And the thing with the speaking, I just felt called and it wouldn't go away. And so basically here I am thinking one day, it just keeps eating at me. And I'm like, okay, I need to get started speaking. And the person of the big talk out of New York City sends me an email and it says, when do you want help to get started speaking? And it's right after I thought this thought. So I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, this is
the challenge is
okay.
being thrown at you.
Uncanny. This is, kind of like, well, okay. And then I kept feeling drawn to this course that Tim Story had, who's a life coach. And it was Make Your Dreams a Reality. And I just didn't understand how that went along with speaking at all. But I thought, well, all right, it won't leave me alone. Let me sign up for this course. So I go online to sign up. The first thing I see is how to get over the fear of public speaking pops up.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm gonna sign up. I sign up, and the very first day he calls me out on like the Zoom, and I left out the big dream because I thought it sounded too big. I just said I want to travel the world and help women with their self-esteem. I think I didn't say travel the world. I just said I want to help women with their self-esteem, because traveling the world to help women sounded so big. So I left that part out. And he calls me out. I see you there. I care about you. And then he says, you're going to do it. You're going to absolutely do it. And you're not going to just do it here. You're going to do it around the world. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I just want to say, like, the journey of figuring it out, and pretty soon I'm telling you, I'm one of these skeptics. You got to just drag I dragged my feet, and I was like still feeling, called to speak, had not done it. And Lewis Howes had this contest to go to Powerful You. And Lewis Howes, if you don't know who he has a podcast called The School of Greatness. And he's one of the reasons I ever started podcasting. So I literally win these tickets. I'm at the chiropractor. I had filled something out, didn't even know if I filled it out correctly. And when I get out of the chiropractor, it says, you've won VIP tickets to Utah to Powerful You. So I'm telling you, I go on this trip. My husband thinks I'm nuts. Why are you leaving 2 days after you win a trip? And I'm like, well, I get to meet Lewis Howes in the green room for one, but I just feel like I won this for a reason for two. It's too uncanny.
Absolutely.
I get there. I'm there. I have no clue. I meet Lewis in the green room. He tells me public speaking isn't scalable. But I wasn't trying to scale. I was feeling called to speak, and I had a fear of public speaking. So I told him that, and he said, well, then you really want to listen to my speech later. So I still am there. I have no idea why I'm there. I'm trying to figure it out. And I knew when I was in the front row listening to him talk about how to overcome his fear of public speaking. This is like, okay, how much more gift wrapped does it need to be for me? And he really helped me overcome the fear when he talked about his journey, because it really put it in perspective for me. Like, he's going with a cast on his arm. because he had a major injury, and I literally had an injury of my hamstring at the time. So I was kind of on this journey of discovery. So he's walking around like this. He gets his paper out. He goes up to Toastmasters. He slaps his paper down. He reads, "Hi, I'm Lewis Howes," off of the paper. And, they told him next time, smile more. So then he comes back, he writes on his paper, "Smile more. Hi, I'm Lewis Howes." And he just, it made it like down to earth for me to see his journey from that to where he is now. And it also felt like surreal. I'm like, the universe is really trying to tell me something here. And when you get that nudge and you get that intuition, I think it's okay to test it out and make sure, is this real? Is this really what I'm supposed, is this really my calling? Is this what I am called to do?
Yeah, I totally agree. And we hear these stories so often when someone has uncovered that calling or their purpose. And it is like the universe is like, right, like she's here, she's ready, she's aligned, like, let's just run with this. And you're suddenly I totally know what you mean. The opportunities that come up, the connections that you make, the meetings that you have, like I found in a very similar way, when I was first starting out with this, just the most incredible things would happen. Like I would kind of think in my mind, like, oh, this would be really useful for me, like a really useful tool. And I would literally get an email a couple of days later from, someone who owned this company that sort of had this tool, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to try this out? We're just looking for feedback, and do you want to do this?" And it was incredible. It's just amazing how things fall into place when you are really aligned with what it is that you're meant to be doing in life.
And I really love that you say on your site, and it was actually in one of your ebooks, let yourself be drawn to what is pulling you. And it was pulling me, and I couldn't explain it. It sounded crazy if I was to tell people the full story, maybe on another podcast, because I just went through that way quick. There was way more, but it was just pulling and pulling me. And I am like, no, no, no. Like, I have this fear of it. And what really helped was Tim Story said to me when I asked him, well, how do you get started speaking? When I finally realized this is my calling, I was like, well, how do you get started? And I realized one of my biggest fears was because I always pictured myself in a room talking to thousands. And he said, and that would be overwhelming, wouldn't it? He said, just picture yourself speaking, to people in a room. He's like, so just speak to the people right in front of you. And that right there was like huge, because I realized, oh wow, no wonder I was overwhelmed. So I started speaking to the people right in front of me in my studio, and people began to cry. Like, it was amazing, like the power in the speaking to the people right there in front of you. It takes the overwhelm right on out of it. Now, what I want to say too equally is, for somebody out there listening, your purpose doesn't always like feel like you may question it. How can we lean into our intuition and begin to experiment and follow what is drawing us?
So I absolutely believe that intuition is a skill that can be developed like any other skill. And with practice, it can, it becomes stronger, it becomes louder, and you do start to develop a lot more confidence in following it. But yeah, as you said, I think when we're really starting out and we do experience that pull, or that, feel ourselves be drawn to something, and when we're just getting our head around it, we do resist it. because, you know, it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't seem logical. We might feel a bit silly about it. We can't explain it. If anyone was to question us, we would come up with nothing, you know, like, I don't know, I just felt like it kind of, you know, so there's a lot that needs to happen in the background in terms of personal development and that personal growth, which I really love. I love that, you know, personal growth and spiritual growth or intuition really go hand in hand. It's a journey of both kind of in parallel. So there needs to be a lot of that self-belief and that self-confidence and that trust, sometimes in, you know, something bigger than us, but also that trust in ourselves that, you know, I'm going to back myself here, even if it's going against the status quo and even if it doesn't seem totally logical. So there are so many different ways that you can develop your intuition. My favorite one is to take what I call intuitive adventures. So just what that means is basically letting yourself be really open and drawn to anything that might come up, and then following it without question. So the key to this is making sure that it is something small and very low risk, that there's no reason not to follow it. Because with intuition, you know, we will get those hits of intuition on things that are very small and very low risk and sort of very fun. And we will also get hits of intuition on things that are really big and things that are a lot higher risk and things that, you know, we might have a lot to lose if we followed it, or it's something that is going to really impact our lives or others' lives. And those hits are hard to follow, you know, even if you get that full, it's not easy to follow those ones, because again, there's so much to sort of air quote lose, or there's so much at stake with that potentially. So to build up to it and to get yourself comfortable with your intuition and get yourself comfortable listening to it, start with those really low risk small experiences. So my favorite one personally is to go into a secondhand bookstore, and I really love that specifically because secondhand bookstores tend to have this beautiful wide range of titles and really interesting books that you wouldn't normally find in a new one. So just go in and spend, you know, an hour or so kind of just wandering around, and just let yourself be drawn to a particular area. And, you know, you might kind of feel drawn to a particular shelf, and then a book might jump out at you. And if you're feeling that pull toward it, you don't need to question it. You don't need to justify it or explain it. You don't need to start, you know, your logical mind is going to kick in and be like, but why this book? Like, what is it? You know, why do I want to read this? You know, and that's a challenge in itself, to just be okay with not knowing. So picking up this book, even if it's something you would never have normally picked up before, and just take it home, you know, see what happens. Like I've done this exercise before, and I've been so excited to get into the book that I've read it on the way home, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. You know, it's there was like a paragraph in there that was exactly what I needed to hear, or something like that. You know, I always had that sort of can clearly see why I was drawn to this book. Other times I've, you know, taken a completely random book home that I'm like, I don't know why I've brought this. Like, it's not something that I'm really interested in at all. I'm just going to take it home anyway. It's fine. It's sat on the shelf for months. And then, you know, one day I remember this one particular one. It was like, I want to say like 3 inches wide. It was this huge, big old book. And I just picked it up and opened it to a completely random page, and this line jumped out at me, and it was just, it answered a question that had been on my mind for you know, for months. It was just something that completely clicked into place, and it was months later that I bought it, and I was like, this is why I picked that up. So giving yourself a chance to explore your intuition and letting it speak up in really low risk situations without questioning it or trying to explain it or trying to get really logical about it is so important. So that's the thing that I would really encourage people to try is, yeah, intuitive adventures. I have a freebie as well that has, I think, 12 little tips. So if people want to grab that, they can.
Well, I love all that you had to say. And recently I was listening to Joel Osteen. I love to listen to him. He's such a positive um, preacher. And I like it when he was talking about fear and faith. And this really clicked with me. Fear and faith are both belief in what you can't see.
Oh, I love that.
So
Yeah.
think about it. What would you rather have then? Fear or
Yeah.
faith, right? Because you're just believing in what you can't see. I mean, on both ends. And another thing that really helped me was just to realize when uh, you are afraid, and like if you were going to go speak, wouldn't you rather focus everything and all of your energy on what your message is that you want to deliver? Isn't it more important, isn't your message bigger than all of that? Wouldn't you rather focus your full energy on delivering the message instead of half of your energy stuck back in fear? And just realizing that if I want to use all of me, I got to focus forward fully. I can't be half stuck in fear and half, like, it's just not going to be as powerful. So fully stepping in is what I had to do at my grand opening. I had of my fitness boutique. I had speakers coming and people were bailing and people were canceling. And one day I was just kind of ranting. I was like, what? If this is how speakers show up? And then it really hit me was, I did not want to speak at my grand opening. I made every excuse, somebody else to speak, this person to speak, this person to speak. And it was really the time for me to show up. And it was scary because I'm like, it's going to be in front of friends, family, people, that they bring. And I knew what I had to say. I kept thinking, I knew what I had to say wasn't going to be a simple thing, my message. And I kept wanting to be like, maybe I could talk about greens, I'll talk about yoga. But I knew the real truth of it was the message I was going to deliver. So I finally said, when this happened and people were showing up, I'm going to show up fully, even if I'm afraid. And I'm going to jump in that water in front of God and everybody and deliver this message. And once I did, that was like my initiation to everything else.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, no fear, not afraid anymore. Um, it's like, it was like a cleansing of sorts. It fully freed me from being afraid.
Ah, I love that. And that is so, yeah, I really love that distinction between, fear and faith. And of course, lean into faith, lean into what you believe in, lean into purpose. Right. That's so important. Yeah, I really love that. That's such a great thing to be really consciously aware of in those moments.
And faith isn't based on circumstances.
Yeah.
It's more believing what you don't see. So I think, it's huge in everything that we do. So how can people out there really start listening? Because I think, it doesn't always make sense. Like we're saying, it's not logical to your mind many times when you get a calling and a nudge and a purpose. But how can they start listening to that nudge and that inner calling and start following it?
So I think for everyone really, when we want to prove things to it, we want to be able to prove things. We want evidence. We want to, if we're struggling to take that leap of faith, we want to be sure that it is what we think it is or what we hope it to be, and not sort of just something we're completely making up or looking into. And it's a tricky one because obviously, you know, it's really difficult to prove these kinds of things. It's really difficult to prove things like intuition. But I think if you have enough experiences and you experience enough of these situations that are unexplainable, it gets to a point where you kind of just surrender to it and you're just like, okay, fine. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop struggling against this. I'm going to stop second guessing it. I'm going to stop needing it to be proved to me over and over again.
Right.
Because it's just, you know, like, what more do I need? Like, what do I need to have happen? But, you know, we sort of joke about, you sort of need someone to like throw this great big sign at you to be like, this is it, this is that thing. But often we get those signs.
And we'd still question it.
Yeah,
because we're afraid.
Yes, yeah. So I think that's a really great question. You know, for someone listening, if you're in that situation now where you are feeling like you've had these signs and you've had these nudges and you're feeling drawn to something, but you're still second guessing it, then I would ask you to reflect on that question of like, what needs to happen for you to be convinced? You know, what needs to happen for you to trust in this or to take that leap of faith? Because it's really likely that you've probably had more than you need. You know, you've probably had more than you need. You probably had more proof than you need. So it gets to a point where, yeah, you just kind of realize, like, you know what? Okay, I'm in it. This is it. I'm not going to second guess it anymore. I don't need to self-doubt. Otherwise, you know, often we'll just spend our whole lives in this cycle of getting a sign and then being really excited about it, but then starting to question it and then dismissing it. And then we get another sign and then we're really excited and then we question it and then we dismiss it, and over again. And this can last, you know, years. It can last decades. So unless you get to the point where you are willing to take that leap of faith and you're willing to just, you know, let go of self-doubt, let go of self-belief, let go of the need for it to be proven to you or proven to someone else, and just go with it. Because yeah, as you said, it's, you know, it's the things that we can't see. It's the intangible part of life, which is just, it's magic, and we just have to accept that that's just how it is.
And I would just have to say that recently, well, now my boutique is expanding during the middle of the pandemic, and I was feeling the push and the nudge, the push and the nudge. I mean, I do the same thing. It takes me a while to get from A to Z, because I question and drag my feet, the whole thing. And I just remember like having this moment, like where I was like, I could just lay my feet up. I could just eat bonbons. It's not like I need to do this. I'm just like, I could just be bored and watch Lifetime all day. No, that is not for me. That is not what I want to do. Or I could take my time and my energy, fully invest myself in living my dreams and going for it all the way. Which would I rather do? Of course it was to fully go for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that is, you have to kind of have that conversation with yourself though. You know, you have to have that like sort of pep talk with yourself, and yeah, and eventually it's like, no, I've got to do it.
It was like, yes, I can do the safe thing. I can do the safe thing, but is that going to fulfill me? Is that, you know, I mean, this thing that I want to do is not, it's bigger than me, and it's not about me. And so, you know, it was a decision-making process. Anytime you're, I think each thing that you do builds on the next thing and the next thing as you go along. So where you started out is not where you finish on your journey to your biggest purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a long learning experience. And, as I said earlier, nothing is ever in vain. So the times that you didn't listen to those nudges, and the times that you took the safe road, and the times that you sort of had that self-doubt, there's always lessons to be learned in those experiences as well. And yeah, I mean, as long as you are learning from them, otherwise, again, they have a way of they sort of will continue to show up for you. But if you're learning from those experiences, it does just provide a stronger platform to continue to build on, and you'll get there.
Yeah. And I just think about, like, you don't want to live your life regretting what you didn't do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I really love those, you see them every now and then, the articles about, is it like top 5 regrets of the dying or something like that, and I really love those in a sort of inspiring, slightly morbid kind of way. In that it is, it's we have one life in this form, whatever it is you believe, but in the version of us that is here now, like, this is it. And yeah, you don't want to get to the end of your time and think, I wish I had done that, or I should have just done the thing that I was afraid of because it wasn't really a big deal anyway. I should have just kind of pushed forward through that. I should have done this, or whatever it is. So yeah, that's something that I kind of always have in the back of my mind, is like, what stories do I want to tell when I'm older? Like, what experiences,
what story do you want to tell? And you are the creator of your stories. You've got to be willing to be in the role and play the role if you want it to be a good story.
Yeah.
What are the 3 reasons people don't reach their goals?
Oh, this is a really good one. So goal setting is obviously a big part of what I talk about as well in terms of personal growth. It's also a very tricky one, because I think that people can often get a little bit disheartened when they're in this cycle of setting goals and not achieving them, and setting them and not achieving them, or kind of falling short of where they would have hoped that they were. So the first reason that we don't achieve our goals, and this is a really big one, and it's that we have stronger subconscious goals working in the background. So we always we have subconscious goals that are kind of ticking over in our mind. If these subconscious goals are aligned with the conscious goals that we have, the ones that we actually write down and stick on our wall, then perfect. Life is great. It's easy. You're going to achieve what you've set out to do. But if there is a conflict between the conscious goals that you've written down and stuck on the wall, and the subconscious goals that are playing over in the background of your mind, those conscious goals just do not stand a chance. Your subconscious is so much stronger. It's this thing that really drives us forward. So as an example, if you have a conscious goal of being a leader in your field or leader in your industry, but you have a really strong subconscious goal to be liked or to be really accepted, you're probably going to have a conflict. So, if you think about what it means to be a leader, it's often that you're really standing out and you're speaking up and you're carving your own path. Whereas a desire to be liked often means kind of fitting in, working towards other people's expectations, and kind of toning down parts of your sort of really standout traits in favor of being liked. And the subconscious goal is always going to win over the conscious one, and you won't even realize that it's happening. It'll show up in terms of fears, or it'll show up in terms of like slight self-sabotage or procrastination, or whatever it might be. So if you have this conscious goal of being a leader in your field, but subconsciously you have this really strong desire to be liked, you're going to tone yourself down. You're going to hold back. You're not going to post that thing or say that thing or do this thing or sign up or stand up or whatever it is. And it's a real struggle because it's not, it's not a matter of motivation or it's not that you don't want it enough or that you don't deserve it or that you can't do it. It's just that there's this conflict. The second reason is that your goals aren't aligned with your beliefs. And this is very similar to, those subconscious goals working in the background. So if your goals are in conflict with your beliefs, again, you're really going to struggle to achieve them. So for example, and this is a really common one with people in business, particularly women, I want to say, but if you have a belief that money isn't important, but you have a goal of this really thriving empire of a business, there is a clear conflict there because, money is important to a very clear, thriving empire of a business. So there's going to always be a struggle. And if you have that deep belief that, money's not important, it's not something I want to focus on, I don't really care about money, you're going to struggle to build that business. Another example, and this is one that I have absolutely had in my life, is a belief that I'm not a sporty person. And then I've set goals in terms of like, right, I'm going to the gym 4 times a week, and it's just like, it just kind of conflicts with my belief of who I am or how I see myself. So to ensure that you achieve the goals that you set, you really need to explore the beliefs that relate to that goal first. So this is especially the case if a goal requires a big change in behavior. And there's a reason that you're not already doing the goal. Like there was a reason that I wasn't already going to the gym a few times a week. And it's because it was based around my beliefs and how I saw myself. So to change that, I had to change that idea of, whether I consider myself to be sporty or really active. And I had to change that first.
Or deserving of whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's a huge one as well. And so that's, really important to explore all those beliefs that relate to that goal. And then the third reason that people really struggle is if your actions and habits aren't aligned with your goal. And this is obviously something is, really important. So if you want to be actively working toward your goals every single day. I'm a big fan of just doing a little bit every day. That's how we achieve anything in life. You don't have to kind of devote every waking moment to the goal, but just doing that little consistent bits every single day. But, people have actions and habits that are often in a direct conflict with their goals, and financial goals are a really common one. So, I think generally most people have financial goals, whether it's to save up for a house or whether it's, travel or whatever it is, or to start a business, but their daily actions and habits are taking them away from those goals. So with habits, we really need to circle back to addressing the subconscious goals first, because our habits are always going to be a reflection of what is happening in our subconscious mind, or what it is we believe, deep down at the core level. So start exploring with subconscious belief and then start looking at your habits. And once those are aligned, you will find that you achieve every goal you set out to achieve. Basically, you almost can't help it if your subconscious goals are aligned, if your beliefs are really supporting that goal, and you're taking consistent daily action, even if it's small. You'd have to be almost trying not to achieve your goals to not get there.
How do we overcome this conflict you were talking about earlier?
So overcoming the conflict is really down to self-reflection, and it's a little bit touching on the process of addressing a fear. Like, you want to go back and identify in a very specific way what is the subconscious goal that's there, or what is the belief that is happening in there, and where does it come from and why, and is it actually something else? Like, is it something to do with feeling like I'm deserving of this or not, or is it something to do with a fear that's kind of playing in the background? So that's the place to start, is just that kind of deep self-reflection. Try and pick it all apart, and go through that same process of identify what it is very clearly, understand the root cause, work out a way to reframe it and address it, and then take actions to reinforce the new belief, whatever it is you might want to carry going forward.
Love it. Love it. So many good things. This has been a great conversation today with you. I've enjoyed it so much. What thoughts would you like to leave with everyone today?
Oh yeah, and thank you. I've loved this conversation as well. It's been so much fun. So I guess the thing that I want to leave with everyone today is just the acknowledgement that you have a purpose, and that there is something that you're meant to do in life, and life feels so different. You feel more confident, and you have so much more clarity when you have an understanding of what your purpose is, and you're able to bring it into day-to-day life, however that looks. So, the thing about your purpose is that it's often something that is so simple, and it's often quite broad and quite vague, which is a good thing, because there are so many different ways to bring it to life. And it's something that you can start doing now. You don't have to drastically change your life. You don't have to throw in a day job if you don't want to. You don't have to pack up and run off into the sunset to live your purpose. It's something that is just a natural, normal, everyday part of us and everyday part of life. So I guess that's what I would want to leave people with, is just that acknowledgement of that, and the encouragement to seek it out if you're feeling drawn to that.
I love that. I love that so much. And I just want to acknowledge you so much for all of your valuable insight today. I think any conversation about why we're here is an important one to have. And where can everyone reach you on social media and get all of your free ebooks?
Thank you. My website is mistysansom.com, which is S-A-N for Nelly, S-O-M for mum. And I'm on Instagram as well, just at Misty Sansom. And on my website, you'll see lots of little freebies and things to get started, as well as the ebook if you want to kind of start exploring purpose, just at your own pace, in your own time.
And Sansom is spelled Sansom. And
Yes.
it's not Samson. So I just want to make sure everybody gets that right, so they get to the right place.
It's a
And
funny little thing.
maybe when I come to New Zealand, I'll pop in. We'll go for some coffee.
Yes, absolutely. I will show you around the array of beaches that we're all very spoiled with.
That would be totally fabulous. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.